What's up, YouTube? Pat here with Barely Informative. And I wanted to talk to you about Netflix's Lost in Space. It is awful, and I love it. The thing about it is that it looks as though they took the Lost in Space storyline from days of yore, and whoever the writers and directors were, they just spent their entire lifetimes only watching classic sci-fi TV and movies. I mean, the stuff from like the 70s and the 80s and early 90s, and that was their inspiration for the whole thing. Across I'm only two episodes deep, right? And the things I have seen in all of that old sci-fi. Like I watch The Robot, and like that's clearly a dude in a costume, right? And it made me think of old school Battlestar Galactica. It made me think of old school Star Trek. And you're introduced to this villain, and the way the villain is introduced and kind of snuck into the story, and the characters like, that's totally Battlestar Galactica going on. Like that's a technique that happens in old, especially in the old sci-fi, and even like Dune, and the score. The score is just this sweeping, never-ending score of tension and excitement, and it's totally reminiscent of like scenes from Doctor Who and Star Trek and even Star Wars, and it's never ending, and it's beautiful, and it's one of those things where you first watch and you're like, oh my god, this is the worst. Like even the dialogue is awful, but then after you start watching it, you're like, no, this is like an homage. For it to be so consistently wacky and silly, it's an homage to a past bygone era of sci-fi storytelling. And when you grasp onto that, it's beautiful and amazing. Even just the fact that like there's all these problems that just show up and are solved by Deus Ex Machina. I mean, it's just the fact that like the machine is constantly saving the Robinson family. The machine is hilarious. But it's beautiful, and it's so consistent that it's clearly done on purpose. It seems to me. I'm gonna make my call that the campiness and awfulness is not actually bad storytelling. It's not actually bad sci-fi. It's a sign that the writers and creators of this series have been fans of good and classic sci-fi for a long time. It's taken me 2 episodes. I fell in love with it. It's a blast. It's the kind of thing that turns into like really classic, a cult classic. If it's like the Evil Dead of sci-fi. Like it's just going to be terrible but awesome. But in this time, it's almost like a Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim was a terrible movie until you realize that it was Guillermo del Toro's homage to kaiju films, like classic kaiju films from Japan. And then when you realize that, you're like, oh, that was totally like a live action anime. You're like, yeah, like a kaiju film. And so when you realize that that's what Del Toro was doing with Pacific Rim, suddenly it was a brilliant movie. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening in Lost in Space. It's clearly an homage to classic science fiction movies and TV. And from that perspective, this is a beautiful series. Beautiful series. So I encourage you to go watch it. If you weren't a fan of the old school sci-fi and stuff, and you didn't grow up or weren't interested in that, then I imagine you're probably going to have a terrible time watching Lost in Space. If you do love the classic sci-fi, and I mean, we're talking like the old school stuff, I think you're going to find a lot of love and a lot of interest in this. Even like the outdoor scenes where they're running through wilderness. Like you watch this, you're like, clearly that's a fake plant, and it was put there to make the redwoods not look like the redwoods. And they're running through and like, oh man, they're running through this infinite vast forest. No, they're not. They're running through the same like 100 square feet of forest, just shot from different angles to make it look like a giant forest, like they did in the old school Star Trek episodes. You know, like you would see this one gully in the desert where they shot like 15 different episodes from, just at different angles, because it needed to look like a different planet or a different place. That's exactly what's going on. And it's just so much fun to see. It's a blast. So check it out. Watch Lost in Space. I think you're going to have a good time enjoying the silliness of it all. So Godspeed, don't get eaten by a bear, and watch out for Klingons and other alien robots and stuff. And we'll catch you on the flip side. Was that good?